What if the key to fixing our food system started beneath our feet? That's the question Dr. Jill Clapperton has been asking and answering for decades. Her work is all about exploring and sharing the art and science behind healthier soil and a better food system. Welcome to the Jill Clapperton podcast, formerly known as Tasting Terroir, now expanded and more grounded than ever. Hosted by internationally respected soil scientist Dr. Jill Clapperton and co-host Sarah Harper, this podcast features real conversations with regenerative farmers, scientists, and artisan food makers who are redefining what's possible in agriculture and proving that change starts with the soil. It's part of a larger mission at Regenerative, Jill's company dedicated to improving soil health, crop quality, and human nutrition. And now we're bringing all of it, podcast episodes, soil science clips, expert interviews, and more to our new YouTube home, youtube.com/Jill Clapperton Soil Health. So if you're passionate about regenerative farming, nutrient-dense food, or just want to understand what really makes soil and our food system come alive, you're in the right place. Subscribe, listen, and grow with us.
Before we begin with the podcast that features Gail Fuller, I have to read a disclaimer. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or any treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. So, in other words, you use all the information in this podcast at your own risk. Hi, everyone. Today we feature Gail Fuller. Gail and I founded Fuller Field School together, and now it has just taken off and become the field school for people to attend. And I recommend all of you look it up and think about attending. Gail and I go back quite a long way to when I was really just first starting as a consultant. Gail's a longtime no-tiller, and I started doing some soil vita work, soil respiration work, soil health work with Gail. Gail embraced cover crops and companion crops really early on. Gail started using subterranean clover between the rows of his corn, and we learned a lot from that. And then as things progressed, Gail got really into cover crops, and then one day had an incident where we got into a big drought, and Gail didn't terminate his cover crop early enough, at least according to their rules. And then nothing would have worked anyways because it was dry as a bone. However, he was denied crop insurance, and that set off a cascading chain of events that changed the course of his life, and in many ways also changed mine. Gail and I eventually went with Ryan Stockwell to DC to meet with the House Committee as well as with the Congressional Committee on Agriculture. And we also met with the NRCS at the time. We met with the RMA, the Risk Management Agency, and we talked about rules about cover crops, termination, when they should be terminated, how that should work. And we discussed the fact that there was a lot of old data out there and that the use of cover crops had come a long way. The next year, they introduced revised rules on the use of cover crops in Kansas, in every county except Emporia. I'm sure that was a peculiar coincidence. Regardless of that, that set Gail on a very different trajectory and landed he and Lynette in the new farm that they have now near Severy, Kansas. The podcast you're going to hear is really about Gail's journey into health and wellness of the farmers and how important that is and how he's become the farmer voice for health and wellness. So with no further ado, welcome Gail Fuller. Gail, one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about was lately you've been speaking a lot on health, farm health, and the health of farmers and farmer families and farm communities. And so one of the things I wanted to ask is, how is it came to be speaking about these topics, or this topic?
It really started, I've got to go back almost to the beginning of when I started public speaking, and it was about cover crops and soil health and all of those things. And then I had my crop insurance debacle where I went broke, and yet I was still doing speaking on soil health, but the presentation didn't exactly add up because I'm broke and my yields aren't always corresponding, and so I had to be honest about why the farm wasn't working as well as it was before. Is that you don't have an operating line of credit, or you don't have money, you can't get things done in a timely manner. It wasn't the cover crop's fault that yield didn't follow, things like that. And I found that the more I started being honest about my situation, suddenly after the meeting was over, in the bathroom, in a dark hallway, in a parking lot, some farmer was coming up to me, maybe even calling me the next day, and they would start talking to me about my presentation, but I soon learned that they were wanting to talk about anything except cover crops. They wanted to share their story. And many times these farmers ended up in tears, and I started to realize that I wasn't the only one struggling financially. I wasn't the only one struggling mentally, and probably in many cases these farmers, it was probably the first time they'd ever cried in front of somebody other than a funeral or something like that. And through my going broke and the crop insurance and all that, I became depressed. I really don't know when. Probably my insurance was denied in October of 2012. It was probably somewhere in 2013 or 14. I became more and more depressed. I didn't admit it to myself, which was probably the case, or just didn't pay attention. But when looking back now, I became very reclusive, very withdrawn. My decision making became worse and worse. My confidence was gone. A lot of those signs of depression. And somewhere after our move, which was in 2019, I'd started talking about human health in bits and pieces in my presentations because it's really important with soil health and the gut and all of that, and the microbiome is almost identical. So I started talking about physical health, but I realized somewhere along the way, probably in 2021 or so, Lynette and I had cleaned up our diet. We'd taken chemicals off the farm, a lot of the chemicals out of our diets. And I realized that wasn't the save-all that I thought it was going to be. It was bigger than that I needed to address my mental health from a physical, a mental, and a spiritual standpoint. And there were other things that needed to come into play. And I think somewhere just along those lines, I just heard more and more stories of farmers that were dealing with mental issues, spiritual issues. And it just seemed the more I talked about it, the more people were coming up to me and talking about it. And there was nobody talking about it publicly. And then you start hearing people telling about neighbors committing suicide, about family members committing suicide, about I had friends that work with farmers as advisors, and they would tell me stories of their farmers were depressed and they had no way to help. And it just somewhere all these snowflakes came together, and I just realized that this is a blizzard. Farmers are really depressed, much more when you read now the studies that farmers are 5 times more likely to commit suicide than the average American. And I think from someone that has dealt with depression, you start seeing people before they tell you the truth. You can see it in them, in their habits, in the way they act, the way they talk. And I think for me, it just came to the point that somebody has to stand up. Somebody has to give these farmers permission. Somebody has to do something.
And when we say somebody has to do something, so you're talking about this, but you've also done field days, like your school, field school. You've addressed some of these issues. You've brought in people who specialize in mental health and health issues.
Yep. I think really the tip of the iceberg for me personally that changed my journey was when we had Nicole Masters here in 2021, and she had just written her book, For the Love of Soil. Drew a blank. And so Lynette and I, we try to, if a speaker has written a book, we also want to read the book before the school. And so we got the book and started reading it. Chapter 1 of her book, she talks about her paraquat poisoning, which when I got rid of glyphosate, I replaced it with paraquat. And that really hit me really hard. And I wasn't able to read the book. I couldn't get past the first chapter. But fortunately, Lynette read it, and in the final chapter of the book, Nicole challenges the readers, how can we talk about regenerative farming? How can we talk about healing the soil when there's no talk about healing the farmer? And that really hit home for me. And it makes total sense because we can't heal the farms without healing the farmer at the same time. It goes hand in hand. And I think for me personally, I had been trying to heal my physical problems, my high cholesterol, my high blood pressure, and I'd work on that for a while. And then I'd get that kind of going, then I'd work on my mental health for a while, and then I'd go back, oh, something physically went wrong. And it was the same way with my farm. Oh, let's plant a cover crop over here, and then let's go and graze over here. And it was just all piecemeal. I wasn't putting myself and my relationship with the farm, I wasn't putting that all into one basket and doing it all together. I wasn't letting the farm help me heal, and I wasn't helping heal the farm. It was like the 8-horse hitch, and all 8 horses are going in opposite directions. And they're all going really fast, and they're all working really hard.
And you're being pulled to pieces.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're being pulled to pieces, and the wagon's going nowhere. That was my journey for the previous 10 years. And once I really started thinking about it in those terms, and it dawned on me. I've been on the farms and ranches of the people leading this movement. But now that I think about it, I've yet to be on a regenerative farm, including my own.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
Yeah, because I don't think really any of us yet understand the importance of healing ourselves while we're healing our farms.
And our farms are healing us.
Exactly. Until I allowed the farm in and learned how to communicate and be with the farm, be at one with the farm. And I did a presentation 10 years ago we talk about farming in nature's image.
Right.
And I did a presentation called Healing in Nature's Image. And it was all just smoke and mirrors. It was all just BS. My intention was good at the time, but I didn't totally understand what I was talking about. And it wasn't until I started communicating with the farm and letting the farm be a part of the decision making and being a part of the process of healing that I found out how badly my farm needs healed and how badly my farm wants to heal me.
So it's a process together. It was interesting, Nicole and you both talking about paraquat, because right now in Australia there's a big movement on paraquat to get it banned. And I believe it's paraquat because of issues, and talking about Parkinson's, for example, and some of these farm chemicals. And I know that there's a number of people that blame farm chemicals for some of the issues with autism and some of the other issues that farmers have. But then again, we know that all those things have risks, right? So I heard, we talked about this a bit earlier, when my son was 3 years old and I was in Australia on sabbatical leave, that was in the year 2000, I was reading an article in a magazine in Australia that talked about how boys in particular were going to struggle with image and ego and things like that because of the role, some of the roles, and that their roles weren't as clearly defined because women were accepting more of these roles. And what I found was that in organic agriculture, a lot of the farmers, when I first started in working with organic agriculture, that a lot of the farmers I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for my wife. And there was a lot of the farm meetings I would go to, there would be mostly men. In fact, I might be the only woman in 500 people. There may be maybe one or two others, but really wouldn't be very many when I first started speaking. And I went to this, when I started going to the organic meetings, the Saskatchewan organic meetings, half of the audience would be women. The difference between conventional farming and organic farming. Now, do you think that has something to do with what you're talking about with the healing and the farm healing?
I think it has a lot to do with it. Back when I first started speaking, and just like you would go to a meeting and it would be 99.9% men. And we always thought if there was 100 people in the room and if we could convince 1, 2, maybe 3 of them, it was a good day. But anytime I talked to the wife, within 10 or 15 minutes, I could change her. She totally got it. It makes perfect sense. Females are the nurturers. They're the mothers. They should get it, and they know the truth about the finances of the farm. They know the truth about the husband coming home late from work, smelling of chemicals and missing the kids' games, and the stress of the marriage and the farm and all of that. They get it. And the men, for way too many generations, haven't been allowed to get in touch with that feminine side that they all have in them. And so it's all been denied. And so if you want to go down the rabbit hole, it could be, why are the women not coming? Because the men don't want them at the meeting, because they think they're not allowed. That the men would have to show vulnerability and lose some ego and pride, and that's not been allowed for so many generations that they don't know that's a possibility.
I think that's interesting, because I take it a little bit differently than that, and that was that organic agriculture has always been about food, not commodities so much. And women and mothers, as you've spoken about, think about food, like the food that goes on the table, the food that I feed the children. How much food do I have? Where do I find good food? What food is how do I feed my family? And even though men have been, if you think of hunter-gatherers, the hunter, but women have been the gatherers, and really, if meat didn't come back, then it was really up to women to provide a lot of that food, if we go really primal on this discussion. And I think that organic agriculture just speaks to women more, because it's about health and it's about food, something that mothers are probably more associated with than fathers. I think that's changing, but I also think that part of that is that women see their husbands, the wives see their husbands really struggling, and know about the healing properties of food.
Yeah, I think somewhere back in the 60s, 70s, we quit calling it what we were doing in large-scale agriculture food, and it became commodities. And what that did was just desensitized us from spraying all the crap on it. It just made it easy, because we weren't spraying our food anymore. It's just a commodity. Who cares? So I think that really did start that separation. I will also, so when you talk about conventional or industrial agriculture and organic, I get some of that, but I also at the same time see some problems with the organic side, because it's still a system that's designed to kill. And those farmers every morning wake up, what do I need to kill today? And so they've eliminated the toxic chemicals, yet they're still going out and killing weeds or killing insects, or worried about what's killing their crops. And I think, so for me, I guess personally, organic is a huge first step away from industrial agriculture, but I think we need to go another step beyond that and find ways of growing our food in systems that are designed to grow things, systems designed to live. How can we let nature balance whatever is it? If some insect is attacking my farm, today we just look at it as, well, I'm not going to go out and kill the insect. What am I not growing that houses the predator? What am I missing in my system? What else can I grow to help balance that out?
So if we go back to how we started on this journey of health, is the philosophy about the farm and how you work with the farm. How does that work with with the talks that you give on health?
I think for me personally, there's probably a lot of ways I can go with this. Once we really started focusing on that, this was a team effort. The farm, myself, the animals, the plants, Lynette. And so for me, being the male, I talked earlier about ego and pride and how many generations that the males have been removed from not being allowed to cry, from having to just show pride. And pride is a great thing, but we've taken it way too far, along with ego, at least from the male side. And so I think it was, for me, I had to strip myself of a lot of that. And yet at the same time realize that I can be a part of this farm, but I don't have to conquer, I don't have to be in charge, and I don't have to control all the time. That maybe my job is just literally putting up and taking down the fence. But allowing the farm to have some say, and having Lynette having some say, and the animals having some say in how the management takes place. And it's not just my job as the male. That I can still be manly in moving the fence, but I don't have to be in charge, and it's not from a conquer mentality.
Okay. So what about depression in that? So now one of the things that you brought up in the beginning was depression, and having farmers come up to you and talk about depression. So this philosophy that you're talking about, how do other people use this? Like how would I as a farmer coming up to you, how do I embrace what you're talking about to help me through my depression and some of the issues that are going on in my farm?
For me, part of it was looking at the whole picture and not just trying to piecemeal it, not just fixing my diet, not just sitting with nature for a little bit, but it was all of those things. It was admitting to myself I was depressed, which was big. And then we have to find ways to deal with stress, because the finances and a lot of those things don't go away. And so it's not that how can I eliminate all of this, but how can I learn to live with it? How can I manage it? How can I find a way to leave it outside when I go in the house at night? There were things like that, and these are all very difficult and they take time. And that's part of the problem. I'm not sure that's the right word, but in today's world, we're all about fast, cheap, and easy. And that's why drugs have become the problem. And I'm not talking about marijuana as much as I'm talking about depression meds or anything else. You take a pill and you get a quick fix. Only it's not a fix, it's just putting a bigger Band-Aid on the problem. It's just masking the symptoms or making them go away for a little bit. It doesn't really fix anything. You've got to get into the mindset that I can't fix the depression in a week. I can't fix the depression in a year. It's taking your small victories. It's going to take time. And slowly working yourself into a happier place. A couple of the big ones for me was, I found, and I think most people would find this, is that I'm really good at beating myself up. And
so self-talk.
Yeah.
Negative self-talk.
Yeah. And a lot of it was even jokingly. There's the really screwing something up and really chewing yourself out. But there was just some of that sometimes, hey, stupid, you forgot to grab that other blankety blank. And you even laughed. It wasn't anything big. It was a small thing. And you were just making fun of yourself to remember it next time. But when you, even the smallest of things, that your cells soak that in. Zach Bush talked about it in the 2019 Field School. He says you're working on being positive. And so you're scrolling your phone and you're checking the news headlines, and a negative headline pops up. Oh, that's negative. I'm not going to read that because I'm going to stay positive. Just reading that headline your cells soak that negativity in, so it's already there. So you got to find a way to stay away from that. And I thought that was going to be the hardest thing that I ever did, and I found out that was the second hardest part. Because once I quit beating myself up, then the hardest part was rewarding myself when I did something good.
Oh.
And yeah, that's even harder. Nice job, Gail. You remembered to shut the gate. Nice job, Gail. You remembered the bucket. Nice job. You remembered to pick up blankety blank at the store that you didn't have on your list. And that's all. It seems like trivial stuff, but it's really big when you start complimenting yourself for doing something right. And then it gets even more difficult. And that's saying, I love you, Gail. You're an awesome person. You're a really good guy.
You did your best today.
Yeah, you did your best. Today was a really bad day, but we made it through and we did okay, and tomorrow we'll start over. So whether it was a good day or a bad day, finding ways to compliment yourself on the small victories and telling yourself you love yourself and you're a good-looking person every morning when you look in the mirror, nobody likes to do that.
Isn't that wild, though, right?
Yeah.
Because you think about it as kids. You know, when you have kids, you do that all the time with your kids. You know how important it is that you reinforce positivity.
Yep.
And, oh, yeah, you did that really well. Or Chaim Janot talks about descriptive praise. Oh, I like that color choice. Like that color, I like that. Or describing things in a way that doesn't have any judgment on it. But what I notice is that as we grow older, or as young kids, we don't often hear a lot of judgment. But as we get older, it seems important that we have judgment.
Yeah.
And that judgment can be, like you said, really negative. And more now, when you're listening to podcasts or self-help things, you hear a lot of information about negative self-talk and how absolutely dangerous that is. It was interesting that I think in farm meetings, and I haven't heard this in any of the farm meetings I've been speaking at, but really early on in farm meetings in Australia, like at Vic No-Till, and then again at the South Australia No-Till meeting, there were men giving talks about mental health and farmer health. And then also I think that would have been in 2016 maybe, or 17, I gave a talk in South Australia. And they actually had somebody from a suicide crisis line come on, a man, speak at the meeting about suicide and how to recognize it and what to do if you do see somebody in crisis. So one of the things I've written down in my book to ask you was, as you were talking about, this is your own journey, but did you have help along the way? What help did you have along the way? And what help would you recommend for people going forward? Or what community resources did you use in order to help yourself through this? And that you're still using or that you're trying to build in order to help yourself through this?
First of all, I was blessed to have Lynette, who didn't leave. When it got really ugly and when I was probably deep down trying to run her off. When you get that depressed, you just want to be by yourself.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah. And so that obviously having somebody there that you can talk to is always big. Something that the field school did that obviously you were a part of, and it took me a long time to figure out because we realized that men were coming to the field school, and even without being provoked, they would stand up and start to tell a story, and they would start shedding tears in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And what this school did, and it's just given people a safe place. People feel safe that they can share, and it doesn't leave the circle. And so I think from that, Lynette and I joined a peer group 3 or 4 years ago, and we also started a group that's called Regenerate Me, that is a group of people that we get together 2 or 3 times a year. And you can call it a self-help group or like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's any of all of those things. And it's a group of people that we invited, and we now meet 3 times a year, and we've now met 11 times, I think. And we set some boundaries, and we created a safe place. And everybody that comes to this group now knows that they can share their grief, their sorrow, their pains, their struggles, their victories, their successes. And there's not judgment and there's not ego, but there's communication, there's empathy, there's support, there's ideas, and there's people that care. And so there's lots of ways of doing this, but I think it's me as a person getting to the point that I can take that first step, that I realize that I need some help and I want help. And I think a lot of us are there, but we just need permission. We need to know that it's okay to share our stories.
And seek help. And ask others.
Yeah.
Like, how did you get through this? And because sometimes just sharing is enough to say, oh, I guess I could do this too. And I can get there.
And I went to a counselor when I got divorced. I mean, we all deal with depression. We lose a loved one. We get divorced. There's major stresses in our lives. And we all get depressed at certain times in different ways. And I went to a counselor for a while, and I highly recommend that. And it's not easy and it's not fun. But it was amazing, the things that I learned, learning different tools for letting go of anger and getting things out, whether it's screaming or breaking things. One of the things my counselor told me was go to a garage sale and buy a bunch of cheap plates and take them out and just beat the hell out of them.
Like the Greeks, they used to throw things in the fireplace. I remember watching, it was a British series, and there are 2 female characters, and the one older lady, the one younger woman thinks she's going crazy. She's midlife. She thinks she's going crazy. She has to take drugs, or she has to be on Valium or lithium or something like that. And finally, this older woman, she goes, oh, you don't have to do that. It's the change, honey. And she said, tell you what I do. I grab a teacup, and she said, and I just let it fall on the floor when I'm getting really angry, or I just smash it. And she said, you can just pretend like you dropped it, or you can just go in the kitchen while everybody else is in the dining room and smash the heck out of it. Yep. And just to help yourself through that and feel better about yourself. And I get that. I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, I probably could have used that.
Yeah.
Maybe I still can use that. Throw things and whatnot, and ways to deal with anger. And because there's nothing wrong with being angry. Like, everything I've read is like, there's nothing wrong with being angry. It's about how you handle that anger.
Yep.
And it does worry me that we rely on farmers to grow food, but we put a lot of stress on farmers. I think we put a lot of stress on farmers. Like, I talk about that in my talk sometimes. We are asking farmers to look after the environment. We're asking them to grow cheap food, despite the fact that everything we put into the food is expensive, including our time, which no farmer ever values properly. You're supposed to put your own value in there. And farmers I've seen farmers value their time at $20 an hour. Like, baloney. It's worth way more than that. And so we're not valuing ourselves. So I think that also adds to the whole, I guess what you're saying is the system, the farming system, where you're not valuing yourself enough. You're not valuing the farm. We talk about soil health. We're not valuing the soil.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you and I talked about earlier, and I think most women who are listening here are going to understand, is it's really hard to get men to feel. And we joke about it. Oh, I guess that's a feeling thing. I guess you don't want to talk about that. Or it's a healing thing. Or you might have to go to the doctor. What? No, I'm too busy to do that. And that's another thing, men's health. How important it is for men to go to the doctor, for men to talk to professionals and things like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the biggest things that I did, and that was put me first. And that was a really difficult thing for me to do. because when you say me first, if you'd have told me that 5 years ago, I think of people that put me first as arrogant jerks.
Oh,
They want to farm the whole world. They want $1 billion.
yeah,
Greedy jerks.
yeah,
But what putting me first meant was I'm a farmer, which means I grow food, and I'm male, which means I am the protector of my family and the provider.
yeah.
How can I do all those things if I'm sick?
Okay.
I love my kids. I love my grandkids. I love Lynette. I love my farm, and I care for all of them, and I'm out here killing myself taking care of all of them. What good is it if I'm killing myself?
How can you look after anything if you're
I
killing
can't.
yourself? I mean, it's like when you think about caregivers and you're caring for someone in your family or caring for someone, the first thing they tell you is caregivers have to look after themselves, because how can you look after someone else if you're not looking after yourself?
So now I put myself before my kids, before my grandkids, before Lynette, before the farm, and that's not a statement of arrogance.
No,
It's a statement of caring.
I'm caring for myself, and then so I can care for everyone else and the people I care about, the people I love, and the things that I love.
Yep.
Yeah, I get that. And one of the series, I don't know if you've ever read them, but I really like Brene Brown's leadership book, but I
Yeah.
like some of the things that she talks about vulnerability and
Yep.
how important that is. And I think some of the talk that you've been having about putting yourself first is also about being vulnerable.
Yep. We talked about that quite a bit during our Heal the Farmer workshops, is showing vulnerability. It's
Kind of
very similar to stripping yourself of ego and judgment and
feels
all
like
those
hippie
things.
talk, but at the same time, though, it's just really... And what's wrong with celebrating small victories and celebrating you when you do your best? We all think you're doing your best, and you can celebrate yourself for doing your best.
And a lot of that comes from generational trauma, is we're trying to live up to Dad's expectations and Grandpa's expectations and,
Oh, family's powerful.
yep, and all of that. I even, during a lot of my presentations now, I say, when was the last time you said I love you to yourself? When was the last time you said out loud, I am enough? And I say, let's say it. I'll say it again. I said, we're not going to the next slide. Do you say it till I can hear you? And they all look, I'm enough.
Heads down.
Yep.
Yeah, I get it. I think that a lot of us would be the same in that, is, just really that negative self-talk and getting through that.
Yep.
Yeah. Then we know there's a lot of resources there for that, but we also know that bringing this topic up at farm meetings is a good thing.
Yeah.
And
They're
allowing
ready, begging for it.
and allowing farmers to feel that it's safe to talk about mental health.
Yep.
And I think it is more.
Yeah.
I hear people talking. I went to the therapist. It's not, oh, you went to a shrink? Yeah, the vampire sign.
Yep.
Bringing out the silver bullets and the wooden
Yep,
stakes,
give me some
you know?
garlic.
Yeah, I'm going to wear my garlic necklace. Yeah.
I tell people quite a bit. People judge me when I cry up here on stage. My story is painful and it's personal, and you think I'm weak for crying in front of you? You come up here and cry.
It takes a lot of courage.
It takes a lot stronger person to snap here and cry in front of a crowd than it does to hold it back in.
Yeah.
And we all feel better when we cry, so why don't we do it more often?
Maybe we should laugh more often too, right?
We should laugh more often too. Real laugh. Yeah.
The real belly laugh, which I can't do right now because I broke
Yeah,
that
you
rib.
can't laugh right now. If anybody tells you a good joke right now, isn't a friend.
Thank you for this, Gail.
Yeah.
Thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability,
Thank you.
and I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you for everything you've done for me, for us.
Yeah. Let's just say that we're both enough.
We
I'm
are
okay
enough.
with saying we are enough.
We're enough.
Before we wrap up, we want to give a quick shout out to something exciting that Gail has founded and Jill was part of from the very beginning, the Fuller Field School 2025. It's happening September 30th through October 1st in Severy, Kansas. and it's become a must-attend event for anyone passionate about the future of food and farming. This year's theme is Farming Revolution, and the lineup features some powerful voices like Dr. Zach Bush and Dr. Jonathan Lundgren, both helping to shape the conversation around soil health, ecological farming, and human well-being. If you're looking to deepen your understanding of regenerative ag and connect with a dynamic, like-minded community out on the farm under the stars, you won't want to miss this. Learn more and register at fullerfieldschool.com.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that podcast as much as I did. And I really enjoy chatting with amazing people that are doing fantastic things. I just can't help being enthusiastic for the future. And I hope that it gives you a sense of hope. Hope that we're always going to be able to cope with climate change, and we're always going to be able to grow enough nutritious food for everyone. And that agriculture is really going to be the answer to a lot of our problems. It is the solution. The future is bright, and we should all be hopeful. And more than anything, I hope I'll see you the next time. Bye for now.